Welcome to the shop. All right, sometimes planes crash, and when they do, it's up to us to either fix them or trash them. It's amazing how often when you let it sit there and you start looking at it, you can say, hey, you know what, we can fix this. Whether it is, like on some of my videos, you know, a lot of time, a lot of glue, and some paint. And in other cases, that ain't gonna happen. And it's easier and less expensive just to, in this case, buy a new fuselage and transfer everything over. So in this video, I'm gonna go through that process. I'm gonna take everything out and I'm gonna assess it. There are some servos that are totally destroyed. There are some cables that are ripped out and need to be replaced or repaired. So I'm gonna go through that entire process of swapping everything out just to show that all is not lost when you crash your plane. It's not a big deal. You can order parts and repair these things, and it's not going to cost, you know, an arm and a leg to do. So anyway, I'm going to go through that whole process, show you what that's like. First step, let's take this thing all apart, take out all the parts, and test everything. So stick around. All right, like I said, first thing we're going to do is just start taking stuff apart and assessing what we're dealing with here. So as you look at the parts, and you will identify that, hey, there is maybe a lot less damage than we originally thought. In some cases, we don't have to be careful with ripping things apart. In some cases, we can just rip stuff out. Often, it's good to take pictures of stuff so you know how to reassemble. Like, for example, normally in this landing gear here, I would do a couple things to, I'd take some pictures so I could see how it was assembled. But in this case, because it's so damaged, you know, for example, I don't know if you can see it, the servo is just completely blown apart. Yeah. And hopefully the retract works. And so a lot of this stuff we'll need to get, you know, we'll do a lot of testing on all the parts. And the parts that don't work, we can order. And FMS usually has a pretty good stock of parts if it is one of their premium planes or planes that sells off a lot. The planes that are a little longer in the tooth don't sell well, and, well, those go by the wayside. Anyway, all right, so I want to be careful here. All right, we got a retract out, got all the plugs, or all the screws. And we will put that over here. This part is pretty much gone. A lot of cables, just, you know, this is undoing the cables and assessing what we got. Again, none of this is rocket science. So I'll have to check the receiver. I often keep chunks like this because you never know. You might need a chunk of that. All right, we're gonna remove the tail section. Gonna need to get hex driver. It's almost like, oh, I know what it is. He coated this with, he coated this plane with Minwax. That's what that is. Well, shoot. Let's remove the wing and some of these parts. Hopefully the motor's okay. We can get access to wing. That's not good. Hopefully we don't have any damage to that. Those wires through. And then these should just come through like so. All right, that's gone. And now we can kind of assess what's going on here. This obviously was still running when a bunch of foam and everything impacted it. He was still at full throttle, it looks like. Okay, not a problem. The connectors, that all looks good. We got a bad servo for sure. We don't know about the other ones. We'll test those. And then we'll have to start testing. That's the next step, is test some of the electronics to see where we stand. Let me get out my tester, clean some stuff up here, and get that done. All right, first thing we're going to do is test the elevator and rudder. Put those into my, and you can see that those work. Those servos are fine. Do the same with the rudder. That's working fine. Center it. All right. So from that standpoint, we don't need to touch this. It's good to go. So first thing I want to test, let's test the landing gear. Plug those in. Oh, sometimes we can see some damage here too. We had a big old crack right there. So, and pieces are falling out, so we gotta see what that's all about. But good news is the wing, at least the landing gear, aren't broken. We'll have to fix that little part right there, but that isn't a big deal. All right, what is this? I don't know if this is, yeah, we got flaps. One thing I can see, obviously, is this particular flap cable has a slight issue with the plug. So we will have to replace that and or repair it. Two ways we can do it. It could be just the plastic housing's broken, and I have new plastic housings that these things just clip back into. And that's an easy fix. If they're damaged, I'll have to cut and recrimp everything, which sometimes that's what you got to do. All right, so I'm going to test at least one of the flaps. Well, that flap worked just fine. This aileron worked. So both the ailerons work. That's great. All right, so the only problem on the wing is obviously this big old crack. And this crack probably over here as well. We'll fix that. Repair that plug. So far that's not a huge problem. This retrack, it took a hell of a hit. Let's see if she's working. Okay. So that retrack works. The only problem with this is this part right here. It's bent up. Easy to fix. It's just it's at a real specific angle the way it slides. We'll have to work on that, but not a total disaster. Okay, so we got that all sorted out. Now it's going to be, just put everything back. I'll test the motor. We will need to get a new one of these servos. But so far, that's it. start putting everything back in the fuselage. Let's start going through that process. Plug it right in there, and let's see, we're going to plug this battery in, and we want to first drop this down to, don't know if you heard that, and we can see the fan is moving. I'm not going to go crazy with it because it'll fly all over the table. So, no sense in that. So we know the motor works. It didn't get damaged. At least it works. We don't know if there's been any serious damage to anything, but it moved freely and didn't make any crazy noises. So, we're good there. A couple things I want to show. I 3D print these little trays. They're pretty simple. You'll also notice, more importantly, is the different screws. These screws are all the same, which is really helpful. These were what I took out of the retracts, and these hold the motor, the EDF in place. So, and then any loose parts, I always keep in kind of a tray. Just keep everything a little tidy. Sometimes I have a larger acro bin for other parts, just to keep things straight, because I've got usually a bunch of projects going on at the same time. Okay, so we're going to reroute these cables, and they're going to go in there. I know you can't see all of this, but it's pretty simple. One thing just to note, and I did this on my Viper, a lot of times these Vipers are a little bit on the nose heavy side, and if you can throw the battery back as far as you want, but it's still slightly nose heavy. When they're more neutral, they land a lot better. And often what I had done to mine is cut out a section of foam right here and insert about maybe almost an ounce of lead right there. That allowed me some flexibility with my battery. I'm not going to do that for Brian. He can do that if that's how he wants it set up. All right, so we're going to get that down like so, and voila, put the screws in, and we will reroute the cables right through here. Sometimes, we need a way of fishing the cables out. There's no obstructions anywhere, so I'm not too terribly worried about all of that. And here they are here. So, we got that. Make sure I'm looking at everything correctly. Yep. So we got that all sorted out. We're good there. This one. Got one of these little picks. Throw this in here. Don't need that to get in the way. There's enough in the way. But for sure, this small cable doesn't have a lot. Hard to grab. So we're going to pull that. So at least we have that one through. And then we'll pull this one through. And then we have this guy here, and he's going to go like so. And these cables fold over and go in like so. I know, hopefully you can see all this stuff I'm doing here. Hopefully. But what you want is a nice clean area in front of the ducted fan. So we got that. Hopefully you can see most of that. No, it's not perfect, but trying to show it, film it, and fix it is kind of challenging. It actually goes together pretty simple. Inside here there's a open area, and in the fuselage kit it comes with one of these, which just glue in place. A little foam tack, and that just locks right in place. It's pretty pretty trivial. And then that's it. We're gonna then work on the wing. We got these all routed, so we're good here. Now we're gonna work on the wing. Okay, so this busted plug here, well, you can see that well enough. I think it's just the plastic part that's broke. I'm going to take that plastic part off, and these little plugs, test them to make sure they're okay. They're not bent too bad. Sometimes that happens. They get bent. But I will say that often it's not too hard to just fix. All right, plastic piece busted. I buy a lot of parts. If I need one part, I buy one of these whole doggone things and it allows me to make new plugs. So here's a replacement for it. And these have little clips, 3 little clips right there. And it's always going to be red in the middle. As long as you remember red in the middle, it doesn't matter. So I'm inspecting these. They're not too bent. I'm happy with it. There's a way that these go in. You have to practice it. I don't think I can show it on the camera right now. But they slide in with a certain part that's facing up. And often they will click into place. They'll have an audible click because that little plastic piece snaps down on the connector and locks it in place. Kind of a little plastic spring. I can hear a little click. You probably can't because I'm jabbering too much. Yeah. Okay, so those work. I'm going to test that to make sure that that actually does in fact work. It looked fine. I think it just busted that top piece. So, and I pull on them, make sure they're in there correctly. So I'm happy with that. Here's the plan. Got that crack right there. Goes from there all the way into here. And we are going to put a little E6000 in the syringe. Put a bunch in there. These syringes I buy, and again, like a lot of these videos, you know, I'll try to put all the stuff that I've used in the link below. Get most of it on Amazon. Anyway, these syringes I cut off a little bit because it's almost too tight. And so what I'm going to do now, it's kind of tricky. I want to open it up a little bit and get the syringe in here and start. It's going to make a mess, but this is on the underside. I don't know if I can show much, but I'll do the best. It's a super thin foam right here in the wheel well there. There's not much going on. Right here it's a little thicker. I'm trying to get a bunch of glue in there and pull to suck that back out. I'm going to grab a toothpick to work some of the glue into this crack here. I'm going to have to look on the other side, see what kind of mess I made on the other side here. Make sure there's plenty of glue, and I just want to make sure we got a... E6000 is pretty good. You know, I'm probably using too much, but yeah, don't want it like that on the other side too much. Okay, so here's the next step. We have to clamp it, and the way I'm going to clamp it is by using the retract, pulling this and sliding that in, and you can see where it's kind of... I'm going to get a paper towel and clean off some of the excess. I don't mind the excess on the inside here because no one's going to see that mark. I mean, let's be honest, the wing is pretty bad shape, but I'm just going to wipe off as much as I can here. Go on the back side here, and that looks pretty good. Just trying to get it to close all the way. That's about as good as I can do as far as clamping that. There's no magical way. Over here it's not as bad. There's just a little crack right here. So I'm going to take, in this case actually I'm going to take this type of carbon fiber material and embed it down in there and down in here. Give it a little bit more strength. And that's it. I think the wing will be fine. It's just letting this cure up with the E6000, which is great stuff. And it should do a pretty decent job of sealing that up. So we'll let it sit overnight. I have a piece of carbon fiber strip. I don't know, it's probably 4 millimeters by 1/2 millimeter. All right, so this, after I cut it to size, rough it up a bit, I'm going to put it right there to give some strength to that joint. Trusty hobby knife, and I'm going to put it right there. And cut our line. Make sure it's deep enough. We'll test fit. I typically do also is kind of jam my piece I'm working with. Like so. Feel good that that's going to slide in. I'm wearing a glove, so when I scoop this thing up with E6000. I'm going to use E6000 for this because I really want the stuff to stick. So I'm going to smear it a little bit with my finger, put a light coating on. Okay. Make sure it's all over and insert that. Really poke it in there good. Wipe it off with the paper towel and we're done. I like it so all you see is a little slit. And that's it. That's how I like to do these fixes. All right, gonna do the other one and the wing will be complete. We're pretty much done with it. Let me walk through this. I didn't film all of this stuff. It's pretty simple really. We got a new servo that had to go in there, and that gets glued in place. The wires, there's a small channel, and it's basically you're fitting the wires in there flat, and the channel comes up and comes through here. It allows you to basically shove that servo wire all the way in and into the fuselage, all the way back here. Same thing with the retract. That gets screwed back down. Obviously, this little push rod right there needs to get put on correctly. But for the most part, it's a pretty simple reconfiguration and reassembly of parts. And then we have this piece that glues on, right like so. So that's supplied in the fuselage kit, which is kind of handy. That just gets glued on with foam tack or some kind of flexible contact cement. Go. Gear goes out, and I want to make sure that material, I'm going to put a little glue all over that cable in there just to make sure it is secure against the wall. I'm going to use my handy dandy little brush right on the wire. You can't see it from that angle, sorry, but just so the wire doesn't pull out at any point. Retract wire and the servo wire. That's done. Servo, the retract is working well, so we're good there. Got to have a servo tester for all this stuff. Just the only way to do it. Well, it's not the only way, but it's my way. So, all right, so that's all in there. This piece right here, I used, in this case, just foam to foam. Works well. Make sure it gets a little tacky. I've been holding it down quite a bit, especially on these corners. It didn't want to adhere, and unfortunately got a little glue on the outside. You can clean it up with alcohol, but it just doesn't clean it up all the way. And I don't want to remove a bunch of paint and everything, so you might have a little excess. Be careful on your application of glue so you don't get too much excess. Nice even coat. Get that coated evenly. And there she goes. They just slide in place. Make sure they're even, look good. Don't want a lot of glue oozing out all over everything if I can help it. That's it. That's done. All right, we've got all of the cable, Y cable extensions and all that stuff complete. So make it a little easier on the next step on connecting everything to the receiver. However, as you can see, all of this fits in this wee little hole, which is not the easiest thing to pull everything through. So I got to kind of go under here and make sure all the cables are going down right. Okay, and they are. All right. You can tell there's a difference in texture or shine. That's because Brian put on a Minwax coat. I'm going to let him do that. In fact, I'm going to let him do the stickers just in case he has another idea of what he wants to do instead of using the stock stickers. All right, we're going to screw the wing back on and do a little testing to make sure everything works. And then this project is complete. This plane took quite a beating. So lining up the screws, things might not line up 100%. Okay, so you might have to move some things around to make sure everything fits properly. So we'll get this all back together and start doing some testing. All right, so got her plugged in. Ailerons are working, elevator's working, rudder's working. We have flaps. We've got landing gear all come down. And let's make sure that the rudder and the nose wheel are working correctly. Yes, they are. And we are done. I'm going to let Brian clean everything up. He's a very competent modeler. So I'm going to let him clean up the bird's nest that I have here in this area. But let him put on the stickers, figure out what he wants to do with that design. He might not want stickers, he might, but you have that option. So anyway, this is pretty much done from my perspective. We're done. Again, this is just to show you that it's not all lost. You can take, for a couple bucks, get a new fuselage, and rebuild your plane. Instead of spending another, $300 on a new plane, you can repair your own. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, leave a comment. If you like this kind of video, hit that like button. Thanks, bye.